Alright guys, so we are at peak strawberry production right now. I'm planning on coming through and picking some of these strawberries here today. I usually go out every couple days. These are all June bearing, so they just have tons and tons and tons of strawberries on them. Like every 2 or so days I'm getting a bowl full, a soup bowl. So it's a good amount that we're getting right now just off these guys, and I'm planning on getting more of them. They've already got runners on them, so I'm going to be spreading them out to another section of the garden where I just put some trees in this spring, and they're waiting for I'm waiting for them to leaf out, but there's just a lot of empty space there now that could be utilized. So I'm going to grow some strawberries around the bases of them while they're still small, the trees. But these guys over here, these are day neutral strawberries. They're kind of like the premium everbearing strawberry, and I'm trying to get more of them growing. I grew a row here, and 2 of them died when I first put them in because they weren't quite strong enough, and then one of them died just this spring because it just did not have the roots, and it was just not quite strong enough from last year. And these are the original plants, which have grown. You can tell that they're bigger than these ones here that are still pretty new, but they're a lot smaller than these guys, and they were the same size at around the same age, 2 years ago. The problem though is that they're just really root bound, they're overcrowded, and they really need to get replaced. They need to get replaced more often than June bearing, specifically because of how much they produce. But they've stopped growing runners. So what I need to do, and what I did with this row here, was I actually propagated them via crown division, which is what I'm going to show you guys here today. And so what you basically need to do is you need to find a group of crowns that you want to select for this process. And so I just took a chunk out here, but I can kind of show you is that when you look back through here, you can see the old stems as they grow. And these ones, this is kind of an example of why they're not doing so good, is that they're long, they're spindly up out of the ground, and these will grow roots along them if they're in contact with the ground as they're growing. But once they get dried out like this, they kind of don't want to anymore. So I took a group of them out. I've got probably like 4, more like 6 crowns in here, and I'm going to propagate them. So I'm going to take them over to my table here where I can kind of show you what I'm going to do. Okay, so I got them here up on my table where I'm going to start working on them. And I've got some containers here. I'm going to be doing these 4 here, and I'm probably just going to be discarding the rest. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this type of propagation method. Obviously, like I said, this is the primary method that you're going to be propagating strawberry plants that don't really produce runners. So a lot of your bred alpine varieties kind of have to get propagated this way because they're just so unencouraged to produce runners. But another issue is when you have a plant that overcrowds, gets stressed, and then I don't really know how to explain it, but they kind of just develop this kind of inherited stress that kind of prevents them from producing runners. Now, online you'll get told that day neutral strawberries actually won't produce runners, but these ones, this is the Delise variety. It produced profuse amounts of runners when I first had it in the garden and was first growing it in containers, but it got into this overcrowded state where it kind of stopped producing runners. And I'll actually compare it to this other guy here, which you may have seen before, which is my wild Virginia strawberries. And these have the exact same issue, and they're still suffering, although they are much healthier than they used to be. And it came about from performing one of these crown divisions. This guy over here is another wild strawberry, had the same issue. They just got crazy overcrowded, stopped producing runners, so I had to do an emergency crown division, and over the course of several years, nurse them back to health. And there's still issues that they have. This one is doing so much healthier, but it still just does not produce runners. I've been getting 1 runner per year off of these guys now. And this one, I've finally decided I'm just going to let it grow, and I'm going to try to get as many runners off of it as possible, because wild strawberries are actually a lot better about producing multiple plants across 1 runner than modern strawberries are. Like you can kind of see them here. I've got a whole bunch down here at the bottom. But to kind of compare these 2 types of propagation methods, I want to use kind of an analogy. These runners here are kind of the peak way to do it. They develop around the same speed, but there's several steps that you kind of have to pay attention to. When it comes to runners, they're kind of like someone in their late teens, early 20s. They're just starting out. They've got tons of potential. They've got tons of energy. And so these guys here, if you actually look at the bottoms of them, they have the fleshy material that the runner is made out of, but they also have these sort of nubs on the bottom. Those are where the roots are ready to come out. They've been waiting, and you can actually see on this one here, it's already got what appears to be some roots already growing on it. And so I have it kind of leaned over here. I've got this in the ground. I need to come through and kind of wet the soil, because that's what they really respond to most is wet soil or damp soil down here below, not this dry stuff. So I kind of bury them. I put stuff along the sides of the runners to kind of keep them pressed into the ground, and eventually they will produce roots. They stay alive a lot easier when you have them connected to the mother plant, but if you have ideal conditions like a shady spot with very moist soil, you can actually remove them from the mother when the root nodes start to form, and it will do just fine. Compare that to propagating by crowns. Now these are kind of like someone in their early to mid 30s. They still have a lot of potential, but they've kind of just been sitting around for a while, and so there's a couple steps that you kind of have to pay attention to. One of which being that they have to have some roots on them to begin with. It's very hard to get an old crown to start producing new roots when there aren't any to begin with. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I gotta set my phone down to do it, is I'm going to take off all these fruits off of here. And I know it's a shame, it's a bit of a waste, but nothing's really going to get wasted because I'm going to be feeding these to my chickens once I get them chopped off. So let me take care of that and then split these guys up a little bit more for you. Okay, I got all the strawberries cut off them, and I've kind of broken this up a little bit, and you can kind of see. So this is something important to look out for, is that these guys right here are the crowns themselves as they grow over time. So when you look at the strawberry plant, you can see the leaves emerging. They've got kind of this fleshy tissue that's attached to them, and it just kind of continues to open up from the center with new ones coming out. And as they get older, they kind of get pushed off to the side, and they slowly begin to dry up, and they become that stemmy material that's on the outside. It's not wood, but it's kind of a thick woody-like material. And that stuff, it has a lot of energy in it, but like I said, those kind of inhibit us a little bit when they're particularly long. Like this one here, for example, I could plant it down here because there's roots down here, but all of this would get wasted, and the older sections of this aren't actually going to be really growing. At least I haven't noticed them to grow all that much. If you guys have any different experiences, by all means share it. But so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be separating these a little bit farther down, because this kind of looks like one plant, but I've actually got what looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly 5 crowns in this bundle. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to separate it down to 1 crown with as much of this root mass behind it as well, because we want to be planting it right up to that crown level. So here's an example of one. I peeled off a lot of that old dead material. It's still got a couple good smaller roots on here, but also this one long one down here at the bottom. And I've got almost none of that stem left on it. And the reason for this, that I recommend that you get all of that stem off and that you try to keep them as short as possible with those roots, is that a lot of people don't realize that as that opening kind of flower action with that pseudostem occurs, the plant actually grows taller. Modern strawberries kind of actually grow taller with that pseudostem, and that's one of the contributing factors for their decline as they get older, on top of this crowding issue. And so when I go to plant this, I'm actually going to be planting it probably down to here, not where the crown meets these roots here. I'm actually going to be kind of burying it just a little bit. And I actually have had almost zero crown rot issues when planting at this depth. This variety is the only strawberry that I've had issues with rot, but that's because of the climate that we live in and how clay the soil is, not because of how I bury these. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this soil in these containers a little bit wetter, because they're still really dry, but I've been having them soak here in this puddle of water for just a couple minutes. Got some lavender here that I've been growing from seed. Really excited about that. But I'm going to get these in there, I'm going to get them propped up, and I'm going to keep them in the shade of this deck here, not out in the open sun, for at least a couple weeks as they grow stronger. Now, these containers are not very big for strawberries, and I don't want that to be that big, because all I want to do is I want to give this just enough space to build a robust root system, so that when it's ready, I'm going to put it right back out in the garden. Ideally, actually, right where I took it out from. I'm going to be taking out that whole row, and I'm going to be replacing it with hopefully 4 new healthy plants that will begin producing. Because these are day neutral, they will be producing this year, but I'm planning on removing strawberries at least the first month or 2 that they're in the ground, just because I want to have a little bit more time to focus on the roots. But after those first 2 months or so, you really don't have to baby these very much at all. They will begin to produce fruit, and they'll do just fine. So I'm going to get these in these containers here for you, and then we'll be right back. All right, so here they are in their containers, and I want you guys to really understand that one of the reasons that I plant them deeper than commonly kind of advised is twofold. One is stability, right? These guys, they have so little roots on them. Even, you know, if you have a lot of roots, there's still very little. And you really need to make sure that they can have some degree of stability in that container. The second reason is because these containers are, you know, decently height, you know, about 4 inches or so. And something really important is that if you have this guy just at the very top, you need to make sure that that very top section remains as moist as you would actually want the bottoms to be. And so you have to really play this kind of balancing game of keeping it moist so that it can develop those roots deeper, so that it can survive with soil drier at that very top level. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to come through here and I'm going to hose down, you know, gently but thoroughly hose down this top section, and then just continue to do that every other day while it's in this shaded location. I'm going to keep it in this container here so that it has a constant supply of water getting soaked up into those roots, because it is starting to get a lot warmer in this area of the country, and it's finally starting to dry out just a little bit more. And so I really want to keep that as moist as possible until I know that those roots are deep enough that I don't have to be hosing it down every day. I just wanted to show you guys that. I'll probably make another video when I put them in, just so you can see kind of the difference in their health. And then these guys I'm going to toss over to my chickens so they can scratch and eat at the foliage. I mean, you can produce so many strawberry plants this way. It's really crazy. You could almost, off of one plant, you could produce orders of magnitude more in this way than you would if you just propagated them from runners. But of course, you know, you'd be losing a whole plant in terms of fruit and age in that process. So it's really something that personally I wouldn't recommend unless you were running into this issue where they just would not produce any runners. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next one.